Everything is happening through these screens.
How are we getting the most out of that person?
I want to see this thing grow long term.
Amazing story. You have such a unique perspective on that.
Schedule a 2-week vacation.
I applaud those models.
Undervalue.
Secure your digital footprint as well.
Why were they even put in place in the first place?
Only the most adaptable survive. Let's get to the leaders list. The strongest brands don't start with logos and taglines. They start with the truth. And the truth comes from aligning your values, your culture, and your image. And when you get it right, you become a magnet for the right kind of talent, the right kind of partners, and the right kind of growth. And that takes real intentional focus. So that's why it's on the leaders list. And it's also why we've invited Kim Kraemer, the CEO of Waterhouse Brands, to come join us today. She's an expert at helping companies bridge the gap between who they are, what they stand for, and how they show up. And that's not brand fluff. That's about building identity from the inside out. I'm Bryon Morrison. Let's get to the leaders list. Okay, Kim Kraemer, thank you so much for being on the leaders list. We're thrilled to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So, Kim, I always like to start off with just a little bit of an overview on your company. Waterhouse is a fantastic agency, specifically focused in a really niche area. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to understand what you do. So if you just want to kick off with that, that'd be great.
Sure. So first, I'm Kim Kraemer, founder and CEO of Waterhouse Brands. We are a boutique agency focused in a very unique area of life sciences communications. We are about 9 people at this point and have been in business since 2017 when we identified a gap in the market for a firm that could really bridge helping corporate communications and HR folks develop a unified brand mission and build that from the inside out.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about you as a marketer because I've always felt like brand and culture are essentially the same thing in many respects, because what you go tell the rest of the world has to be reinforced internally by how you operate. And so I love the way you bring those two groups together. You came from corporate, Fortune 500. You worked in holding companies. You've done it, seen it from a lot of different angles. What inspired you to go do it on your own?
Well, as you noted, my career trajectory has led me to a lot of different experiences. I started out in an international PR firm. I then moved to the West Coast and worked in-house at a global biotechnology company. And that led me to a startup leading the first minimally invasive heart surgery product and launched that nationwide. And then I followed my former Chiron boss to McKesson, which, as you noted, is a Fortune 100 company. All of the experiences that I've had, both on the agency side and in-house, really had some common themes. So doing public relations, investor relations, employee communications, and working on brand architecture and product launches and go-to-market strategies. Every single one of these experiences allowed me to see healthcare as this big ecosystem from a different side, and to really work at the nexus of a company's operating, right? We are communicators, and when you're in Corp Comm, you're on the front lines. You're also within the engine of a company, understanding how leaders think and operate and what those internal dynamics and tensions really are. So throughout my career, I was in this role of being a little bit more reactive to the whims and needs of Wall Street or employees or local government agencies when we were seeking to get entitlements to build new buildings. It was more reactive, and also with the media. So fast forward to my consulting work, and I really developed this sense that culture was a rarely understood, not well understood, and really rarely evangelized competitive advantage that as leaders, CEOs of different companies of different sizes, they either got it or they didn't. And I had the pleasure of working with three CEOs, three of my companies who really understood that a company's reputation in the market and its the perceptions that existed with customers was built on not what you said or what you showed up looking like, but on what a company did and how it did it. And that leads you right down to core values as a fundamental pillar of building a cultural foundation and nurturing of an internal company workforce environment so that the experience internally matched what customers and other external constituencies were seeing and feeling externally. So that became my insight that there weren't a lot of typical agencies that did that well, that looked at the intersection of public relations, investor relations, and multi-audience communications through a holistic lens. And so that became my personal mission to create a firm that really understood how companies think and operate and how to make the most of it externally. So building the brand from the inside out became our real niche competitive advantage.
Yeah, the idea of working with a company at that core level in what is, I would determine, the most important thing, understanding and being able to communicate what is the most important thing, and then have that filter through the entire organization. It's got to be incredibly rewarding to see that happen in organizations. But tell me a little bit about the types of clients you work with, because I would imagine the bigger the company, it becomes incredibly difficult to have that ripple through the organization and be consistent, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it really starts from the top down, but it's built from the bottom up, right? So leaders have to have a very clear sense of what their leadership philosophy is and work to articulate the culture that they have currently and be really frank about, is this going to get us to where we need to go? There are times in every company's life cycle that it's important to pause, take a step back, and ask the really hard question if what got us here is going to get us to the next level. And we work with companies who have to ask that question, whether they're startups and going out and raising a Series A, or trying to, once they've established some proof of concept, go out and raise Series B and beyond, or whether or not they're trying to take their foundation of product validation, technology innovation, and commercial ideas and go to the public markets for that in the form of an IPO. And then there are later stage companies that have been in the public markets, they have commercial products, and they are going through growing pains. So I think the common theme here is that culture is something that has to be intentionally defined and nurtured. It starts with leadership being really wide-eyed and clear about how the culture can support a company's business goals and objectives. And again, it's not something you just talk about. It's something you really have to feel, which is why our approach is about using what we call the ALIGN methodology, 5-part strategic yet creative process that helps align leaders, their boards, and their employees around a shared vision for the future. So it's the strategic North Star, it's that cultural secret sauce, it's articulating it and driving it into everything that becomes the fabric of the organization, how employees engage, and then what they deliver.
Yeah, I want to dig into that more, your process, but you brought up several things about how a company goes through different growth stages, and what got us here will not get us there. Let's talk a little bit about you and Waterhouse, and what growth stage would you say that you are in? And then, well, let's just start there. What growth? I know you're going through, like, our listeners. I know you've opened a second office. That's an entirely different, mode. And so, just tell us a little bit about what's going on with Waterhouse.
Sure. Well, we launched in 2017, as I said, in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And when we launched, we were all virtual. So my whole corporate working experience led me to the point of it would be nice to build a team and have brick and mortar, but also have it very hybrid and virtual. I'd say 6 years into our journey, realized that in order for us to grow, and to answer your question, I think that we are somewhere between grow and scale. I really do think we are scaling, and yet sometimes to scale, you have to contract a bit, which is we've recently tightened our team in order to grow a little bit more strategically. So we set our sights on Boston, which is one of the largest, if not the most vibrant biotech community in the United States. And about a year ago, made the decision and actually took strides to build our practice in that region, which has been going well.
That's great. That's great. You just felt like working on both coasts would be really easy for you, right?
Well, I launched my career in Boston, so that's an important. I have family roots in Boston. At the time when I started working in biotech communications, if you can believe it, there was not a single company in that area that had a product that was FDA approved, which is what led me to the West Coast, to working in-house at a company that had products on the market. And so what made this a good time is that, personally, my husband actually had a job opportunity, big opportunity to go to work at a pharma company. And I said, let's do it. Let's take it.
I love it.
Put a stake in the ground in Boston, and see what happens, roll the dice. And it's been a good experience so far. But
well, it's a gutsy move, but you're more than capable. You're not going to lie. What?
I said, I'm not going to lie. It is a challenge to be in two places at once.
Yes, I can understand that. Okay, so if you're between, grow and scale, what are the things that are on your personal leaders list? Like, what are the things that you've had to balance and you're focused on right now?
I think it's really been about working on the business versus in the business. And there are periods of time when I am able to focus on growth strategy, scale strategy, looking at how our organization is structured, focus on leading my executive leadership team so that they can be set up for success and lead our client delivery team. And then there are times when my personal expertise as a brand strategist is really required. And that's requires me to be more immersed in the business and in the client work. So that's the biggest growth edge and challenge that I would say I personally face, which I'm sure, you're familiar with the term, the founder bottleneck, something I'm constantly working on.
Yeah. Well, going back to your leaders list and what you're focused on, how do you determine like what's next? Some of it, like you just brought up, is just a reality, right? A client requirement. You are a magician. You know your space better than anyone else. So your ability to apply yourself is a requirement. We know that. But in terms of working on the business, how do you prioritize what goes on the list?
Well, I think it's prioritizing is, for me, thinking about what are our goals. We use the Entrepreneur's Operating System, the EOS, and are really focused on and diligent about setting quarterly rocks, which assign key priorities to each one of our leaders. So my priority is to ensure that my leaders have the resources they need and the focus they need and the time with me that they need to achieve their goals. So goal achievement is a big priority focus for me. It's something I'm constantly working with my team on. I'd also say we're looking at growth strategy, right? We're looking at how can we scale efficiently in a way that it's not just about the number of people that we have, but looking at external channel relationships. Can we market ourselves differently and create more of a sales flywheel effect? I'm also focusing on how can we use contract resources as subject matter experts for key accounts to expand our capacity when and where needed. And then I'm also looking at strategic options, building relationships with other agencies who are in kind of with services that are adjacent to ours and complementary, and with an eye down the road of, will we partner? Will we exit? I mean, it's about strategy. It's balancing it all can be very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're obviously doing a great job of it. Specifically in your industry, I would imagine a lot of the relationships that you have with clients, they do look to you to be like a central source of solutions. And so your ability to bring in other partners, that seems like a natural extension for the business, but that definitely requires some thought. It's a different process than being good at what you do, right?
It is a different process. And, your point about how we service clients really comes down to our ability to instill our core values in our own business, not just talk about it with with clients. So we have 3 core values that really guide how we work. Lead the way with an informed, inspired point of view, partner for success. And that means not just with each other and our team, but with any agency in our client's ecosystem. And then last but not least, deliver extraordinary. And that deliver extraordinary piece is really a commitment that our team has to push ourselves until we are wowed and proud. And so I'd say that one of my leadership priorities to ensure we can best serve clients is making sure we have a great culture ourselves and that our people are really representing the values that we commit to.
Well, you certainly know what that means. I mean, that's just a matter of practicing what you preach, right? So that's great.
Bryon, I think another priority as you think of as you look at scaling for a CEO that is trying to manage it all, trying to build a great organizational infrastructure, operating systems, people, processes, culture. We also have to keep our eye on where the markets are moving and how the needs of our clients are constantly changing. And so another big priority for me is to look at AI. And right now we have a 5-part methodology, as I mentioned, the Align methodology, and we are AI automating it. So that is a massive initiative that for a small team has to be at the forefront of what we do, and yet can't compete with how we're delivering work. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to really help us go further into this scale stage and make it easier, no matter if our employees are on the West Coast or the East Coast, to have a real framework of consistency that allows us to deliver for clients and live our values.
Man, I love it. So are you taking on that AI initiative internally? Did you bring in an outside group? Are you working with contractors? I'm just kind of curious because every organization that we talk to is focused on AI.
Yeah.
And so that's a natural thing, but I'd love to get a feel for how you're approaching it.
Sure. Well, it's early days, I would say, in our process. We have gone through the initiative of mapping every juncture in our process that has analysis, deliverables, inputs, and outputs, and really shaped the vision. And then with that, we are working with an outside consulting firm that is really a two-person shop. And what makes it logical is that the leader of this firm was in-house with Waterhouse for 2 years as our chief technology officer and creative director. And he is a real product design expert and systems thinker and documentation guru. And most importantly, he knows our methodology and our process really well and is able to take that experience and knowledge and very efficiently assess the landscape of AI platforms and tools and custom design a systematic or series of agents that can support us each step of the way.
Love it. It's so smart that you were starting with your core process, right? And so a lot of the companies that I talk to, they don't, they want to jump straight to AI. And
Right.
it's really a change management and process enablement and, the elimination of friction. Sometimes it's not even AI, it's just automation, right? But if you start with a core process and you do that homework, then that is what really enables AI. So it's really smart for you to approach it that way. And it's great to have somebody who really does understand that process inside and out, but can then help you document it in this process so that other people can see it and understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, that core process, the aligned methodology, was designed by me, developed by me 20 plus years ago when I led the rebrand of a major global pharmaceutical company. And it's all in my head often. And over the years, I've inculcated so many people, our brand strategists, into the methodology. But at the end of the day, kind of the secret sauce has been what imprimatur I am able to put on. So our goal in automating or developing an AI tool that takes our methodology and brings it, kind of democratizes it in a way for our team, is about solving a very core problem, which is me as a bottleneck. And that makes it something that is more scalable and I'd say usable for our team without jeopardizing our commitment, which is deliver extraordinary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there is that magic that gets added to it, right? So you're essentially creating the sentient Kim. That's awesome.
yeah, and I mean, one of the reasons we chose to go with our former technology architect is because he knows us so well. And you can hire an AI engineer and they can build anything, right? But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you haven't over-engineered a tool to engineer the curiosity and the special nuances that a human touch brings out of the product.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you have to leave room for that magic, right? The human element that gets brought in. So, okay, let's shift now. Thank you so much for telling us everything about it. I think it's super important for people to understand that on the leaders list, we try and bring in people who are in the trenches. They are doing the work also. They understand the challenges because the folks that listen are leaders of SMBs anywhere from 500 employees and fewer. So when we start thinking about that, if you were going to impart some wisdom on an organization that is going through some brand, culture, HR, that nexus point that Waterhouse works in, what are some of the recommendations you would give to them, and what should be on their leaders list today, knowing your position of expertise?
I think it's a great question. Inflection points, navigating change always is a challenge for leaders. And when they can add to their leaders list a commitment to constantly keep their finger on the pulse of how the employees are feeling, how customers are thinking and feeling, and how we're achieving our goals. It's time to take a step back and ensure that you're doing the work to provide strategic clarity, making sure that the goals that you set for yourself are consistent with the expectations and guidance you're giving to investors and board members and advisors, and working to operationalize that. So that is not just a tops down thing. It requires ensuring employees are bought in along the way.
Yeah, I love that. You bring up a couple of really interesting points. The audiences are very different. So you have to have some sort of a communication data stream that is telling you how do customers feel, staff feel, board feel, like that. That is one piece that I would recommend our listeners think about as part of their leaders list. Do they have a clear data path to really understand how those people feel? So that was fantastic. And then I would also say, like you mentioned, that you guys use EOS, any kind of a planning process, giving yourself that opportunity to, like you said, step back and look at the hard data, but also understand the gut feel of what's happening. That alone would make a massive difference in how someone is thinking about their brand, their culture, and the people that they serve.
Right.
So talk a little bit about your process. That aligned methodology kind of does this for other organizations, right? That's aligning. Help me with this, isn't it? The vision, culture, and image. Is that the idea?
Yes. So our whole thesis is that reputation is built from the inside out, and that it is crucial to align three essential elements of a company's reputation. So first and foremost, it's leaders' vision for where the company's going, making sure that the white space in the market is very clearly identified, and that a company's narrative and story and reflects what they can do that no other company can do. So that vision is really about articulating the company's strategy in a story that is then culture-wise inculcated into the organization, so that employees know what is possible. Like, why are we here? It's not just a company's big goals that we set for Wall Street and our investors. It's about our purpose and the work that we do together to really enact and enable the commitments that we've put out there. And then image is the third piece of it. So that is how a company shows up visually, verbally. The brand elements all need to work together to reflect the vision. And what's important here is that you can have a great leader and say, we are on a mission to do X and our legacy will be Y. And they just go and create a website and market their story, their strategy. There will be a massive disconnect in what the perception is of a company by its audiences if that vision isn't really instilled and embedded into the organization. So what we've found is that it's this virtuous cycle.
Yeah, you can look at a company, their marketing, their brand, and if it's not aligned in the culture, it's almost like the brand loses its heart, right?
Absolutely. It's a feeling. A brand really is a feeling, and that feeling starts and is championed by the people inside who are doing the work.
Yeah, so for every listener out there that's saying, well, that sounds like hocus pocus, and if it's a feeling, I don't know how to measure a feeling, which that might just be their orientation, right? There are ways to measure and understand that, right? So I would temper anyone out there who's going, oh my gosh, they're just talking about feeling. Marketing is art and science. And so there are ways to go through that process. I'm sure you hear that from people who don't really understand marketing that you work with, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we look at measures of success for a company's brand, reputation, and image as being employee sentiment, as being the amount of money you're spending on recruiters, as being market cap, as being the customer and growth journey. And so we have like hard measures. It's not just soft. It's about that feeling translated into a story, and how you show up across your marketing channels is all designed to create what we call reputational pull. And that is creating your brand as a magnetic force that attracts people and audiences to you. And that can be partners, it can be top talent, it can be customers, or it can be investors. So these focus areas really do work together, and it starts with leadership, CEOs having a strong intention about providing each of their audiences with strategic clarity that expresses how they're not just better than competition, but fundamentally different, and that contextualizes their science, their technology, or if you're a services firm, the services you provide in a way that helps your audiences understand why they should engage with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Answer the big question, right?
Answer the big question. And you asked about what should be on the leaders list. I mean, I think measuring employee, measuring
employee satisfaction. Yeah.
Yeah, employee satisfaction. You can do very simple pulse surveys, and also keeping track of customer sentiment, doing win-loss analysis. If you win a piece of business or lose a piece of business, you always have to understand why. I mean, often companies just check in about why did you choose to go with another firm? But when we win a piece of business, I always want to know what tipped us over the edge.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, win-loss report makes a ton of sense. Yeah, so I mean, Kim, this is so important for every leader to understand. And I think it's been incredibly invaluable to understand how you look at where all of those parts of a business come together. If there's any parting thoughts you have about, we want it to be actionable, aside from calling Waterhouse, because that's what people should do, is just call Kim and have you help them with it. But if I were going to do some homework on my own, what's the first thing I should do tomorrow to improve and align, my brand, my culture, my vision, and my image? Like where should I start, and what's the easy thing I go do tomorrow?
Well, I think there are three things that I would say every leader has to be thinking about always. One is taking care of yourself and your people, and taking stock of what is that general feeling that are people happy. And this isn't like assessing just what they are doing and are they getting things done, but what is the mood? What is morale? So that's where I'd start with morale. So constantly take care of. Second is reflect often. It's important for any leader that is thinking they need to make a change in the business to get really clear and focused on what they think is working and what they think needs to shift and change before they start an initiative like Align, to bring other people along the journey. And the third is really dare to grow. It's about, it's recognizing that leadership can be lonely at the top and that we all have growth edges. And so I would say, get a coach. If you are unsure about how to take your business to the next level, or what are the barriers and impediments to your company's success, I would get some outside support.
I love that. So take care, reflect often, dare to grow. Those are three things that should be on everybody's leaders list tomorrow, so they can go ahead and examine that and start to recognize where they're at. I love the fact that those are three defining things that matter to each of those audiences, right? So when you were talking about that before, and you were talking about the internal audience, the board, the client, those are just great true norths to think about as you look at each one of those audiences. That's great, Kim. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you for sharing and for being on the leaders list. It's been great to see you.
Thank you so much, Bryon.